G'day, Troy Dean from WP Elevation, and welcome to episode number 70 of the WP Elevation podcast. Our featured guest this week is Curtis McHale. Curtis McHale is a WordPress consultant from Canada, and his goal this year is to achieve $1 million in revenue, which is about $83,000 a month. That's a big goal, but that is the goal that he's looking for in 2015. He's looking to 10x his business. He did about $100,000 last year. He knows a lot about processes, client management, being debt-free. We talk a lot about personal finance in this episode, which is weird because it wasn't scripted. We went right off on a tangent and spoke a lot about personal finance, and I think it's well worth the episode just for that. Rant that we went on. Curtis shares his knowledge freely on this episode of the podcast, and he's giving away 2 complimentary consulting sessions with his good self. You better jump on Skype and pick his brain about anything related to online or the WordPress business. The last client that he consulted with netted an additional $1,000 a month in his contract. So that consulting session is invaluable. Stick around for details on how you can enter the draw to win that competition a little bit later on. It's a great episode, this one. Stay with us. Let's elevate.
This is the WP Elevation Podcast, helping WordPress consultants elevate.
This episode of the WP Elevation Podcast is brought to you by WP Migrate DB Pro. If you don't know what it is, it's all about migrating your database from one WordPress installation to another. It helps immensely when you're developing WordPress sites and when you've got staging environments and testing environments. However, instead of me flapping my gums about it, or in fact, instead of me talking to Brad Tauernard from Delicious Brains, who make WP Migrate DB Pro, why don't we instead have a chat with Jason Resnick, who uses WP Migrate DB Pro every day. G'day, Troy Dean here from WP Elevation, and I'm very pleased to have with me on the line Jason Resnick. Hey Jason, how you doing?
How's it going, Troy?
Whereabouts are you based again, man?
New York City.
New York City, cool.
Yep.
And you're hosting a podcast with
Yes, with Bronson.
That's right.
Yep.
What's it called again?
WP Dev Table.
WP Dev Table. How's it going? You having fun with it?
It's good. Yeah. You know, it's really like relax, and we just bring on developers, talk tools, talk code. Just
awesome.
What geeks do.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we're here talking about WP Migrate DB Pro, the awesome plugin from Brad Tauernard and our friends at Delicious Brains. They are sponsoring the podcast for a month, so I thought it'd be interesting to speak to some of their customers and find out a little bit about it. First of all, why does database importing, exporting, and syncing databases between installations even matter? Why is it something that developers should be thinking about and using as part of their workflow?
Well, there's only so much that a developer can think of, especially with what customers are using, how they're using the site when they register on the site, that kind of deal. And sometimes when you're developing and you're working even in your local environment, you're working in a silo. So when customers are adding, especially from like foreign countries, and they have different characters and things like that, and when you develop against that stuff, you sometimes don't think about that. So you kind of need that live data sometimes to make sure that you're accounting for certain, occurrences that might happen.
And so just to simplify that a little bit for people who are like really new in this space, I remember when I started out, I would push files up to the live server and things would break because I was working on different data and I couldn't work out what was going on. Like even like the front page with the latest posts would look perfect on my local machine, and then when I pushed it up, of course it was different because there was different data on the live database. And I just made an assumption that when I pushed the files up that the data was in sync because I was naive and I didn't know what I was doing. So you can kind of fool yourself into thinking that everything's going really well when you're working on a dummy database, can't you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm always syncing data from, staging to production, all the way back down to local. Especially if you're working on a new feature, you want to know how that feature is interacting with the live data. I mean, it could be comments or posts or products, it could be anything. And, you don't know how your client is using, no matter how well your client, you don't know what they're putting up in the data or anything like that. So it's always good to see what's going on, especially for page speeds and, just variations of aspects to the development.
So what were you doing like originally in the old days before WP Migrate DB Pro? How are you handling this issue?
Yeah, I was doing the same script that everybody else was using. I don't even know what it was called now. I've been using this for so long, but just doing an export and doing a search and replace and then re-upload and hope and pray that everything worked.
So how did you, obviously this was a big enough problem that you went looking for an easier way of doing it. How did you find WP Migrate DB Pro?
I don't know the exact way, but I remember, I was searching for a long time. I was even asking other developers, and that might have been how I found it, through somebody else. And they said, here, try this plugin. And it worked great. I was just like, this is what I've been looking for. So, I jumped right on board almost right away. So.
And it is one of those plugins that you don't realize how much you need it until you start using it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And the time saver. Literally just they've done an awesome job at, maintaining it and adding features and also keeping it lightweight as well. I can't tell you how many hours that I've saved. Probably since the time that I've actually used it, it's probably been months saved by now.
Yeah, right. Wow. And of course, so the thing is, so you just answered my next question, like what is the biggest benefit that you've got from using the plugin? And it's a time-saving thing, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And just the fact that like I can just open up my dev environment locally and just click a button to sync from last night's production, and then matter of 2 minutes from clicking the button, I'm done. I'm set up. Times that's how I work. Is if I find something can save me minutes in a day, then that's a gold mine for me.
And it's really interesting because if you look like traditional manufacturing, this is completely out of left field. But if you look at traditional manufacturing, what the manufacturing industry has been doing for years is working out how to optimize processes so that you can still deliver the same product, but bring your overheads down so that you can maintain a better profit. And that's where I see these kinds of plugins really coming into their own, is they allow us to optimize our workflows so that we can still get product out the door in a shorter space of time, and so that we can, really minimize our overheads and maximize the profit that we can get out of each project and out of our own workflows.
Oh yeah, definitely. They've done some great things also with their add-ons as well. Their media add-on and then their CLI add-on. The CLI add-on just allows you to work, their plugin into your deployment recipes as well. So, I've done that with a couple of clients now, and just makes everything so much easier. Just
awesome.
Just one of those things.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you very much for spending some time chatting with us about your experience using WP Migrate DB Pro. I really appreciate it. I know Brad and the guys at Delicious Brains really appreciate it too. And wish you all the best for the podcast with Bronson. If anyone who's not aware of it, check out, what is it, WP Dev Table?
Yep.
Is that the domain, wpdevtable.com? Can people get it there? Cool. Check out wpdevtable.com and have a listen to another WordPress podcast. Hey, Jason, thanks for hanging out with us.
All right. Thanks for having me, Troy.
Thanks, man. All right, without further ado, let's get into this interview with Curtis McHale. We do go off on a rant in this episode about personal finances. I'm going to give you my elevation tip of the week this week, courtesy of Seamus Ennis, or Seamus Anthony, whichever name he goes by these days. Seamus was a WP Elevation member, one of our earliest members and one of our biggest supporters. And he put me onto a little piece of software called YNAB, You Need a Budget. You can find it at youneedabudget.com. And this thing has totally changed the way I approach my personal finances. Effectively, I'm saving more money and I'm less stressed out. So check out YNAB. It's a learning curve. You have to persist with it. It took me about 3 months to start using it effectively, but it is definitely worth the investment. It has changed my life. I know that's a big call, but it's true. And they're not paying me to say that. Maybe they should. Anyway, check out YNAB. We do go off on a rant about personal finances in this business and how in this episode and why it affects your headspace and why it affects your business. And that little rant is worth the price of admission. And for a free podcast, that's not too bad. Ba-dum-tsh. That joke loses nothing with age. Hey, Curtis is big on systems and processes. He reveals some software that he uses in this episode to help him stay productive, and it might not be what you think it is. Stick around for details on that because it's a great little tip and well worth using. What else is there? Here we go. A couple of quotes from the episode. I believe you transfer value primarily, and then money is a reward for that. Not bad, huh? Why is important to Curtis? In other words, why you do what it is you do. And you'll understand why that's important when you hear the details for entering the competition. By the way, if you hadn't read Start With Why by Simon Sinek, you should definitely read that book. And I love it when Curtis says clients don't care about the technical stuff. That, coming from a WordPress developer, something in that for all of us. It's not just about the business. We're just brainstorming some catchy headlines here for the episode. It's not just about the business. Yes, it's not just about the business. Curtis McHale discusses life as a freelance web designer. He's big on getting outdoors and mountain biking and spending time with his family. Anyway, I could go on for hours. This is an epic episode. It's well worth the listen. Stay with us. Let's go and meet Curtis McHale. G'day, Troy Dean here from WP Elevation, and I'm very pleased to have with me Curtis McHale. Hey, Curtis, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. Yourself?
Awesome. Very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us on the WP Elevation podcast. And you are coming to us from where exactly?
It depends how well you know Canada, but close to Vancouver, British Columbia. So I'm actually about 100 kilometers or 60 miles for our U.S. friends east of Vancouver. I'm right at the border to the U.S., in fact.
Cool. And what time is it and what day is it where you are?
It is February 4th, Wednesday, and it is currently 4 o'clock.
Right.
PM.
And
PM.
if I'm not mistaken, unless Skype is lying to me, tomorrow is your birthday, right?
Actually, today here.
It's today.
February 4th.
Right,
Yeah.
it's today.
I'm recording on my
right.
birthday, so.
Well, dude, what are you doing a podcast interview on your birthday, man? Shouldn't you be out like drinking beer and bowling or something?
You know, I got little kids who have been sick and a wife who has now got it. So no, I will go home and help with that.
Aha.
And that's the life of a dad, which I enlisted for many years ago, and I'm quite happy with it.
You're a good man. It's actually my brother. You share a birthday with my brother. His birthday is February 4 as well.
There you go.
Yeah, so happy birthday, Curtis, and thank you for joining us on the podcast. Okay, so we're going to talk about all things WordPress-ish and geek off in a very good way very soon. But before we do that, quick announcement for the competition this week. Curtis has very kindly offered two, not one, but two consulting sessions this month as a prize with Curtis. We've decided they are invaluable. Tell us the story about the consulting session with your mate over sushi. What happened there?
Oh, my friend, he called me as I was out for sushi, and he was trying to negotiate a long-term contract, and I convinced him, or we changed how he's positioning here, in an extra $1,000 per month. And I'm pretty sure if I had talked to him before he had talked to him initially, he's actually worth $2,000 a month more easily. So
awesome. Cool. There you go. So stick around for details on how you can enter that competition and possibly win a complimentary consulting session with Curtis. You'll have to stick around for details on how to enter that competition a little bit later on. All right. Hey, Curtis, before we start geeking off about WordPress, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, I thought long and hard about this after listening to the show, and I honestly do not know. Nothing sticks out to me. Probably the best thing is when I was 12 or 13, I started racing mountain bikes, and I wanted to be that for a while. I was good, but I was never as good as like in that top 1% to actually be a professional. So that's possibly the closest thing, but I don't remember anything before that.
Do you still ride?
I ride. My bike sits beside me at the office. I commute into work every day. And in the high season of the year, I easily ride 300 kilometers a week.
Wow.
I rode back from Beach Press, which is a 700-kilometer ride, and I did it in 4 days with 40 pounds of gear earlier this summer.
Wow.
So the Beach Press is down in Oregon, and I rode up the coast and then up into Canada.
Wow, that's awesome. When did you discover the web and kind of know that it was something that was going to be used for other than recreational purposes?
Well, my dad, it was actually worked at IBM. like forever. And so I got into a little bit of it there. I remember being in that their big Cray mainframes and him telling me how awesome it was. They had 1 whole terabyte of memory, and that the rest of IBM in general, like all of the whole lab he was at in Toronto, had like 1 whole extra terabyte, which is again comical now. And I
Yeah.
played with GeoCities kind of around that time in my early teens, but then I took a long break. I spent a lot of time guiding outdoor trips, so canoeing, kayaking, rock climbing, a whole bunch of stuff from like my late teens all the way through my mid, almost late 20s before I really came back to the web. Funny enough, during my psychology degree, which I have and never used, I decided to come out and go back straight into web stuff.
Wow. Interesting. My wife's a psychologist and she's currently building wireframes for an organization she's working for.
I'm only now revisiting back. I guess it's actually a counseling degree, but I'm only now revisiting back as I do more business coaching, kind of the counseling and the mentoring
Yeah.
thing after 6 years away from it, 7 years away from it, doing web stuff. So.
Yeah. I think everyone should at least understand the basics of human psychology and understand how we think and why we do the things that we do. Do you remember the first time you saw the WordPress dashboard?
It'd be 6 years ago now. So what's that, like 2.5 or something?
Yeah.
Something like that would be the first time I saw it.
And what was your initial kind of, were you playing with other CMSs at that point?
I absolutely was, and WordPress was the most interesting. And after one bad experience in the WordPress community, I was about to go, and then suddenly met 2 people, Andrea Rennick and then Kim Parcell. And they convinced me that WordPress was still cool, and I stuck around. So to both of them is the reason I'm still around.
You know I'm going to ask what the bad experience was in the WordPress community, don't you?
You can. And basically, I was told I was a moron for asking questions. So in my local area, I got a lot of cows, and there is not a lot of technical people in the area. The biggest community of people is actually Ruby on Rails. And
Yeah.
there are some of the top people in Ruby on Rails happen to be local. There's 1 or 2 of them that are like absolutely top when people say, you know, this person. I'm like, oh, just like he's got my old Xbox. You just like we go out and take photos together. And so coming from especially some of the scripting optimization and JavaScript stuff that they were saying, you need to do this. And he runs sites that, you know, are on the scale of WordPress.com, like e-commerce sites that are massive and massive. And I came and said, like, why aren't we doing this in WordPress? And basically I got told I was a moron by somebody who years later I know is often surly, so I just ignore them now. But
Yeah.
I was, you know, just new to the community and upset because I was called a moron, more or less.
It can be a little bit, I remember the first time I started posting questions in the plugin repository about things. It can be quite intimidating and overwhelming, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and then to be told basically you're a moron with no explanation of really why out of the gate, like, so This was on the old WP Tavern forums, so whenever they were around.
Right. There you go. Well, I'm glad you stuck around. We're all better off for us. How do you describe what you do in one sentence? What's your elevator pitch, so to speak?
I help businesses have effective platforms so that they can live the life they want to live.
Nice. And so what I like about that is that you're talking about the outcome that clients can expect from working with you, not just the how we do it or the technical stuff or the nitty gritty, but you're actually talking about the outcome that they can expect.
Yeah, clients don't care about technical stuff.
Yeah, they don't.
Like, really, they don't. I know we talk about it all the time, and I still catch myself doing it, but what they care is, so I have one, and they sell a car part, and that's all I'll tell you, because I always mix up the car parts, and I sound like a dork to car people. But we talk about bike parts, and I got those down. But like, they sell car parts, and the reason they run their business is actually to input into their community. And so when we were talking about what we could do by letting their online store run better, and they can make more sales, they can actually turn that background into their community and do more community development. And so that is what we focused on, solving their problems so they could accomplish their why.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about why in a moment, and we might dovetail that into the competition a little bit later on. Stick around for that, kids. But before we get there, what does Curtis McHale actually spend most of his time doing day to day, other than looking after sick kids and a sick wife?
I spend a lot of my time doing development. So I am a business consultant, a WordPress consultant that happens to write code, is what I normally feel myself as now. I got into WordPress because code was really interesting, but I don't do it now because it's interesting. I do it because of the problems that I can help people solve. So I do a lot of development, particularly in e-commerce and membership, most specifically WooCommerce, although most of my open source code is actually in WP e-commerce or easy digital downloads.
So just for those that don't know, you're in a team of how many are there working there at the moment?
Me, just me.
Right, but you collaborate with designers or right.
Oh yeah, I'm not a designer. If I have a good design, I can continue to extend it. And at one point I said I was a designer, and we will never speak of that time again. In fact, like the little picture frame that you can probably see for my 4-year-old with like dinosaurs glued to it maybe look better than what I did originally. So I collaborate with that, and I'll collaborate with some people on some content strategy. Like Angie Meeker does really good work on content strategy. And so I'll work with her on that. Or get my clients to work with her more often. I have 1 or 2 good designers that I like to work with as well.
So how do you, I mean, we're kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but I'm interested, how do you manage the workflow? Like, how do you stop that feast and famine cycle of, because as a business consultant, you go out and you get the gig and then you're actually coding and developing stuff. How do you stop that, get the job, do the job, go look for another job cycle?
Well, first off, I use a couple processes to continue to market, to continue to follow up. And then I also do have a lot of email templating set up. So like if you were to send me a new project and ask me like, how much is this going to cost? I'm going to send you back like 300 words. And it took me about 15 seconds to pop it out in Text Expander, maybe another 10 seconds to rewrite 1 or 2 parts of it so that it makes the questions applicable to you and send it off. But the reality is I think you're still going to have that. So I haven't booked in any new work in the last number of weeks, but I'm not dumb. I know that happens, so I save up. Right now, if I had no work, I think I'd have to worry in June, and I could still pay myself a full salary till June, and then I'd have to bank back to our personal savings. So I think really September. Like September is where I'd go get a job at a coffee shop or something, right?
Right.
Or at another agency. So I plan for it, and when they happen, I just stay on my same marketing plan. I keep following up with freelancers, colleagues, clients, prospects, and keep putting out the content regularly to have work come in.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment, about how you actually do that outreach. So I'm just going to plant that seed so you can think about it. What's the one thing that keeps you awake at night about the business? And you're not allowed to say you sick kids.
My sick kids. The one thing, that's hard. I'm not a very big worrier, to be honest. So it has to be really epic for me to get worried about it. Even down to when I was guiding in like serious medical situations, I was the guy who was like, there's not a problem here. These are the 3 things we need to do. We're fine. And people are like, but like someone literally has like, a big stick through their leg. We are okay. Right? No, we're going to go take the shutter off that house. We're going to spine board them and we'll carry them out. And they're like, but no, there's no real issue. So I don't get really worried about it because I set processes in place at this point. Yeah. I used to get more concerned about it. Like when work wasn't coming in, I'd be all stressed out, especially in the first few years, because I didn't know that there was that ebb and flow. And like, I know that January is typically a slow time for me. June is typically a slow time as well. So when it happens, I don't worry about it. When I look at my calendars over the last number of years, like February through March is like typically 70% of my income actually comes in that time. And then it's slow during the summer and I work on personal stuff. And then there's a lot of income that comes in like November, December.
Right. And you mentioned, the process that, so it sounds to me what you're saying is that you just trust in the process, that the process will deliver the results. How did you discover that process was really important in business?
I think I just found myself over and over doing the same things and finding the same things winning. And I said, well, why am I like manufacturing this stuff from scratch every day? That's dumb. And I hate wasting time. Like asking me a question twice, and I'll do this to my wife. She'll ask me a question. I'll be like, didn't we answer that like 5 minutes ago? Yes. I don't understand why you're asking me again, which is not optimal for my wife, I suppose, or for me. But like, that is one thing that really frustrates me. So once I do things once or twice, I'm like, nope, we'll just make that into a template, and I will always pull it out all the time. Right. The worst I have to do is I got a lot of them, so I just have to search it in Text Expander to find the one I want, and that's about it. So
I'm going to put a link to Text Expander in the show notes here because I love Text Expander. It's
awesome.
Increased
there's
my
a Windows
productivity.
version, not of Text Expander, but there's a Windows similar app that I don't remember that actually works with Text Expander back and forth. So you can use Text Expander snippets in that as well.
Awesome.
I don't remember.
So now I really want to ask a question that I've already asked just to see how much it irates you.
Okay.
What's the one thing that keeps you awake at night besides your sick kids?
Beside my dog when it barks.
Right. Fair enough. Well played. What do you do when you're not working and you're not mountain biking?
Well, I do a lot of different things. I'm a dad, so I hang a lot with my kids, and that
Awesome.
was one of the reasons I wanted to work for myself all those years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I'll mountain bike. I'll spend time up in the mountains in BC. I'll run. So I'll mountain run, which is probably more determined hiking because I usually pick really steep things.
Uh-huh.
And I'll take the dog with me. So I'll get up often on Saturdays. I get up at like 5:30, get out on the mountain at 6:30, and then I'm back down for swimming lessons to hang out with the kids and get to see the sunrise on the mountains or something.
Wow,
Trudge
that's
through the
awesome.
snow and the rain just because it's fun.
Wow. So you're an outdoorsy kind of guy.
I am. Yes, I absolutely love being outside. And typically the worse the weather, the more I'm enjoying it. So,
Really?
yeah.
Wow. You and my wife would get along. We got married on the beach and it rained like torrentially right in the middle of our exchanging vows. And I was having an internal meltdown and she was just laughing and loving every minute of it. And
Yeah, I would totally laugh. My wife and I spent our first 3 months married guiding trips in Northern Ontario. So she's done a lot of guiding as well. And most of the outdoor stuff we've done together as well. She bikes a little bit, but she runs mostly, and I run a bit, and I bike mostly.
Wow.
But we've done all the whitewater kayaking and climbing and everything else all together.
cool. You mentioned before that that's years ago that's why you wanted to work for yourself so that you could have that flexibility of spending time with the family. That's obviously something that's really important to you.
Absolutely. Even so, today I dropped off my daughter at school, and I was back for lunch at like 11 o'clock. We had a 2 hour lunch where I read stories, and typically I'd already be back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to hang out. And I usually go to Starbucks in the afternoon, just a couple blocks from my house, and walk back and hang out. And sometimes they even stop by. So Wednesdays is more specifically the day that I use that lots, but there's other days when they're just sick, and can let my wife nap and stick on a movie and work off the kitchen table with some headphones, and that's easy enough.
But you do have an office outside of the house, right?
I do. I have a small house and I have 2 little children. And when you want to get a coffee and you have to hug, bump, high five on the way by, and then during coffee, and then on the way back. And then when you realize you forgot something downstairs, like your coffee, because you were like hug bumping and high five, and you got to go back and do the whole process again, it just takes a long time. Or when you look over and there's like a picture sliding under your door and another picture sliding under your door, and eventually they're complaining because they can't push any more pictures under the door of the office. So, and then even when they're having a bad day, right? So I'm here, despite awesome headphones, you can still hear it all day. And then you don't feel like you were coming into an area, like you feel tired from it all day, even though I didn't have to deal with it. So it is beneficial. And I have, say, about a 15-minute commute to work every day on my bike.
So how much time do you spend in the office and compared to how much time you spend working from home?
Oh, I spend most of my time in the office, probably 70%.
Okay.
So usually Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and half of Friday I'm in the office. Friday afternoons, actually all of Fridays is business development. So I have masterminds in the morning. I have one coaching call with someone that I coach them. And then I do the afternoon is all business stuff. So sometimes business stuff is getting relaxed with a good long bike ride even. And I'm usually out of the office by about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I go find somewhere else, like even the library or a park or something just to work in.
Wow.
Or to read in.
Nice. What do you, if you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing in the business right now, what would it be?
I guess clone myself would be the big thing. There's a bunch of like higher level business development things that I've got mapped out over the next number of months, and I just like to run through them faster. And I think they're high enough level that it's still something I have to deal with. Like I don't have a big enough business and a big enough team to have 4 or 5 people and say, hey, marketing department, you need to do this, right? So even if there was 2 or 3 more people, I don't think I'd quite have enough to really do that yet.
So what is it that, what would be the first task that if you delegated it or gave it to someone else, what would be the first thing that you would get rid of off your desk?
Get rid of so I didn't have to do would actually probably be development.
Yeah.
I enjoy development. I enjoy the challenge of it, but I enjoy more even doing the sales and helping them solve the problems and doing the high level stuff at this point. Development is absolutely interesting, and I choose to code in the evenings. So I don't count it as work, even though it's possibly occasionally work, but my wife's knitting and I'm choosing to work. So I don't work in the evenings for clients almost ever.
Right. Wow. So you see that it's interesting because it's just resonating with me so much. Sometimes I'll be sitting on the couch and my wife will be doing some reading for her psychology, and I'll be just tinkering away, and she'll say, "Are you working?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't think it's work, but I'm still looking at WordPress related stuff, Yes,
Yeah.
maybe I'm playing with a new theme framework, or I'm taking a plugin for a spin, or playing in a sandbox, or whatever. Or maybe I'm doing one of my own personal projects. But so technically, I'm not still working, but I think she would prefer that I was doing something completely unrelated.
Yeah, and so my wife and I have talked about that a bunch of times even, and we draw the line at like, do you have to do this? Could I just close my laptop immediately and put it to the side and it would have no impact on my business? When the answer is yeah, then I'm doing what I would like to do.
Yeah.
When the answer is no, then I am typically I probably didn't plan well or something else came up that is most often my own fault that is forcing me to work in the evenings. Like qualifying it like that, I think I worked 2 weekends last year, maybe. Okay. So, and I worked one morning in the last few weeks because I had an issue with something. So I did like my blogging Saturday morning for 2 hours instead of going on a mountain run.
Right. So nice segue into your blog, because you do blog a lot about the business of being a freelancer and running a small business, yeah? One thing I wanted to ask is, and because I have this conversation a lot, I mean, I blog a little bit about this stuff, but nowhere near as much as you do. I talk a lot about it on the podcast, of course. Do you sort of get worried that potential clients, new clients might read your stuff and just think, oh, well, I don't want to work with this guy because, because you have an opinion about things, or do you sort of worry that you might offend? No, you shake. Yeah, I see you shaking.
So what you're
your
really
head.
asking me is, do I worry that someone I have never met, will likely never meet again, has no personal bearing on me whatsoever? Do I worry what they'll think about me?
Yeah.
No, I have way better things to do with my time than that.
Awesome.
And the fact is, like, I have a few clients who do read my blog, who blog posts come out in response to questions they have. And they comment on my site even regularly, and they email me comments regularly, and they've challenged me on some of the things I've said, and that's totally fine. But they're self-selecting clients that I want.
Yeah.
Because I want to work with someone who's a partner. I think last Friday I talked about a client who was less than complimentary about my client vetting process, basically saying I stuck to it despite they knew exactly what they wanted, and they just wanted a quote on how to do it, basically. And I said, well, let's step back, and why? Is this the best spend? Is this the current problem? Is this like all these things? And they were less than complimentary. And so I added a new template, which let me say something not nice to them and expanded into, hey, I'm glad you found someone to work with you. Have a nice day.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to dig into this a little bit deeper because, it resonates with me so much. And a lot of the stuff that you say on your blog is stuff that I've been practicing in my own business and still getting better at as well. How do you get over that fear of missing out on potential work by being really open and transparent about your processes? Because not everyone's right for us, right? And that's kind of a lesson that we all have to learn. But how did you get to that point where you realize not everyone is right for me and it's okay to miss out on some work?
Well, your biggest job, I think, is to find the right fit. Now, I will admit there's always times when, like, I gotta feed the kids, right? I'm not above doing any job that I do not find morally objectionable to feed my children. That is my one top priority. So I will go work at a coffee shop, and I will not say, I will never do this. I would go be a garbage man. That's fine. If that's what it takes to feed the kids, that's fine. So you may have clients that don't meet your ideal client that you take because you need money. And no one should ever feel bad about that, because that is your top priority. Fridge boxes should be fun to play in, not houses. But after that, like, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the exact question as I got on my tangent. How do I get over the fear of loss?
Yeah.
First off, I budget and save. I have no debt except my house. I will be putting my house on the market soon, and when that goes, we may even rent for a while because I'm not sure if we can step up high enough, and we'll have zero debt whatsoever. So I have almost, like, say I have no payments. I have to pay for my house, and that's it. We operate everything on cash. We do not even have credit cards. We budget well. My wife, which is totally my wife, I'll admit that. If it was me, I would have more cool stuff around me and less cushion in the bank. I totally would. But because we've budgeted, then I just don't have to worry. I can look at the bank account and say, I don't need clients for like weeks and weeks and weeks. It doesn't matter, right? For a couple of months, I just don't even need it. That's the big thing that I see. Like, the pricing articles I write, everyone loves to read. When I write about budgeting, like, nobody comes to the site. It's crickets. And I think that, like, you can always do better pricing and then just spend right up to it no matter what. So learning how to budget and rein in your self-control is a big predictor, even psychologically, of success long term.
Yeah.
And will help your business so much.
Yeah.
And it feels like a lot of stress necessarily or hard to like restrict your spending habits. But then when it comes up to, hey, I want like, so for me, I want to buy a new bike, and we save up and save up and save up. And I drop $7,000 on a bike, which some people sounds crazy, but I ride every day. I ride all the time. And I don't even have to think. $7,000 inside our budget. I can buy anything I want inside that. I upgrade to really crazy stuff theoretically, and it's fine. There's no worry about it whatsoever because I'm not spending. And when they say, "Oh, this is going to cost more," I just say no. So even when we bought our first house, we told our real estate agent, "This is how much we can spend. If you show me a house over than this," and we like wrote it into the contract, "we will find a new real estate agent. I will not buy a house more than this," even though like they were approved for like $50,000 more than we said. No, this is how much we can afford.
You touch on a really interesting kind of mindset, which is, the way to get over that fear of missing out is to make sure that you're not missing out by taking that client. And what I mean by that is, when I first started out, I knew that some clients were a bad fit, but we still did the job because we needed to pay ourselves. And then I got to a point where I was playing gigs as a muso and doing voiceovers around town. And I realized that if we actually take this job, it's actually going to cost the business more than it's going to make because of the time that we're going to put into it. That time could be better spent refining our processes, getting our message right, and finding clients that are a better fit and are going to be more profitable. So in the meantime, I'm not going to draw a wage from the business for a couple of months. I'll go and, play gigs and do my voiceovers. My business partner was doing some freelance design work to pay his, bills. And we restructured the business and repositioned ourselves to find the right kind of clients. And that's the thing that I think no one talks about is that, some clients will actually end up costing you more money than you'll make.
Oh yeah, and like I even make mistakes on this. I made one just before Christmas where it sounded good, and it had been a little bit of a dry spell, so I probably let my bar drop a little lower than I should have. Oh my goodness, it's like 5 calls a day, and about every little thing. Like, how come this doesn't work? Well, you turned off the plugin. That's why it doesn't work. And it was like a freak out. Like, I'm calling you at 9:00 at night, and how come you're not answering this? And I don't answer my phone at night, unless it's on caller ID and a friend. I just don't even answer it. So, and I have a special ring for family, so I don't even pick it up unless it's family. So it just sits over on the counter. And like 5 calls later, and say, "Why did you pick it up? You do not have an access agreement with me. How much does that cost? It costs $10,000 a month to be able to talk to me in evenings and weekends."
That's right.
I'm going to hire someone else to call because I don't want to do it. And they say, "Really?" "Yeah, because I want to go away and go hiking for a week and not have to worry about it. That's the access agreement. I will hire someone so I don't have to do this job." Or you can go to, say, WP Site Care or Maintain or whatever, right?
Yep.
Whatever. And they easily cost me. It was a decently priced contract, but it was always, "Hey, can we add this? Can we do this?" I thought this was included, and like clearly not. At least in my mind, clearly not. And then there's always more misunderstandings because there's always 3 things said, right? There's always what I think I said, what I actually said, and what you heard. And so that just gets amplified when you're talking to a bad client.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great quote. What I think I said, what I actually said, and what you heard. We're going to make that.
Learn that in counseling class.
That's right. We're going to make that a click to tweet, I think, on this episode. That's a good one. So this client vetting process, I'm reading this article at the moment on your website, which is why you require your initial questions answered. And one of the questions that I know that you ask, because we've spoken about this, one of the questions I know you ask a lot of is why? Why are we doing this? Why? What's the point? And we spoke off camera about Simon Sinek's Start With Why, which is a fabulous book. I think I've got it here. If it's not here, it'll be at home.
I've got it on my Kindle.
Here we go. Here it is. Start with why. For those who are not watching the podcast, this is why you should watch the videos on the website, not just listen to it while you're walking your dog around the park. Start with Why by Simon Sinek is a fabulous book, and if you haven't read it, I strongly suggest you read it. So let me ask you this question. This is a bit meta. Why do you ask why?
Because why is important to me. I want to work with businesses with a why that has a 10 times reach. So the car part company, they reach to their community. Like just selling car parts is like selling coffee cups. You get a car part, great, you got your car and you enjoy your car more, right? I know for car people, that's awesome. I have a friend who has restores old cars and he loves it. But even that's his enjoyment and his family's. That doesn't necessarily make you we'll say a better person, but their 10 times reach is their why for running businesses, putting back into their community. They happen to be cycling, a family as well, at least their kids are. So they like do bike lanes, they do bike safety, they do for training for bike safety, and they do all this stuff inputting into their local community. And that is a 10 times reach. Another client that I work with a lot, they help people have better marriages. And so getting like one of the partners through that, one of the spouses through that means that they have a better marriage. Their spouse gets it, their kids get it, their friends get it because they're happier overall. And that's a 10 times reach. And so that is what I'm interested in. The challenges are, honestly, the technical challenges are neither here nor there. A lot of these, it seems totally different to the client. When I look at it under the hood, it's almost exactly the same as something else I've done. We're just putting a different UI on top of that so that it works better for you. But why is the most important? Because that's the stuff I get energized about. That's the stuff that I, have a hard time sitting in my chair when I'm talking to them about and get excited and like realize I'm short of breath pacing in my office because I have like a 20-foot cord on this headset for talking to clients.
So that answered my next question, which is, what is the difference between working on a project where there is a strong sense of why and working on a project where there is no strong sense of why, and it's that you get energized as a consultant and as a collaborator working on that project, and that it's more fun for you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even talking, so the one that I made a mistake accepting, I would say back before Christmas, their why was, hey, we want more money. That's really what it was once we really dug into it a little later in the process. And like once I already signed the contract, and I was like, I just don't even believe in this crap, basically. That's what it came down to. Like I do not get energized. And so when I'm even coming up, which is technically almost exactly the same, they do some health evaluations. And like they were able to save one of their communities like $22 million, and people it's been a 10-year study they've been working on. So they've been like extending people's lives and saving all this money for the healthcare and on and on and on. And that's awesome, right? That I believe in. I can do that. We just want more money. I believe you transfer value and then money is a reward. Sure, like they should get paid well for that. But like that, I just want more money is not. It's a totally terrible why, and I don't want to work with you.
Yeah, and it's and
really. If I say yes, and that's really your why, it's because I need food.
Yeah, it's really funny that when you first start out, that why are you in business? Well, we're in business to make money, and you have to do some soul searching to figure out your why, to actually figure out that making money is not enough to sustain the relationships with your customers and your suppliers and your staff, and to build that community that you're going to need, to build that tribe, as Seth Godin says.
Yeah. Oh, and even finding your why is really hard. I would have told you probably even 2 years ago, even a year ago, I wouldn't have had a why as clearly defined as I have now. I could tell you a lot of components that I now realize were parts of it and things that I enjoyed, like teaching when I taught rock climbing and helping people succeed, the training I provided, the work I did help them succeed at something really good. And then my wife would remind me, but you did the same thing that day and you trained just as hard. And I was like, yeah, but they did this, right? I helped them succeed at that. And so it's only probably in the last 6 months that I've had it nailed down to the one kind of sentence I used earlier.
So you said before that you have processes in place because, this whole working on projects that are right for you, you've obviously got to have a good network of people that you can reach out to keep those kinds of projects coming in and get referrals and make sure that you're working in with, people who are philosophically aligned so that you get the right kind of referrals. And you mentioned before that you have processes in place for reaching out and keeping in touch with people. What are some of the ideas or some of the tools or tactics that you use to reach out to people rather than just saying, hey, now would be a good time to send me a project because I've got nothing in the pipeline?
So I use Contactually.
Yes.
That lets you put people in buckets, and then you can set up follow-up schedules for certain buckets, and then you can put someone in a program. So say a warm lead gets followed up on way more often than a prospect, or than even a good client, someone who's given me lots of work over the years, and I just want to basically touch base every 3 months. But I also follow up with you, Troy, because I have your email now, and so I put it into a colleague bucket, and every 30 to 60 days I will send something, at least that. Sometimes I will say, hey, so Chris Lemma writes a bunch about pricing as well. And so almost every time I find a good pricing article, I'm like, I should send this up to Chris because I just know he'll appreciate that. And I actually go do that through Contactually so that I don't send him something, by accident somewhere else again to send him the same thing. And that sounds kind of lame to say so like even like I do this with friends, with actual friends or people at church. I put them in these buckets even to follow up with them, which like, sounds kind of lame because you're like, wouldn't you just remember? And I am not going to remember.
That's right.
I am very good at like when I write, if I don't write it down, it didn't happen. That's another one I use all the time, which Tom Clancy taught me in one of his books. If you don't write it down, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And if I don't write it down, it's simply not going to happen. So I can have all these intentions. Oh, I should follow up with Troy, and then you'll be off your mind, or even someone I see at church. I should follow up with them and say, hey, how's it going? If I don't put it down, I will not do it. So the fact that I said I want to follow up with this person, I will put them in my system to make sure that I do follow up with them on a regular basis. That's why it's not lame, I suppose.
Yeah.
The only person who doesn't get in that is my wife, because I should, just know that. But I honestly write down my wife's birthday and put reminders in it because I will get doing something and just totally forget.
Yeah. Contactually is awesome. You're preaching to the converted. I love it. I've used it for quite a while now. And in fact, we teach how to use part of the WP Elevation Blueprint in Contactually. It really is a fabulous tool.
If you're really looking for a good sales thing, Contactually has earned me $14,000 in 24 hours of starting it.
Wow.
And it looks, so if the next project that comes up will have earned me $70,000 within 30 days.
Wow.
Because I followed up with a freelancer who said, oh, by the way, I'm actually at this company now. Do you know anything about this problem? And I said, no. Here's the solutions I'm aware of. Here's the other things. And he said, those are all drastically too expensive because they're like $30,000 a month to get in like all their franchises into these lead forms. And right at $60 a month times, a couple, 500-600 people, that's a big expense per month. And I said, hey, I built similar things. I can build this. Why don't I give you an estimate? So if that comes through, like Contactually will have earned me $70,000 within like a month.
Wow. That's awesome. You should definitely fire that off to Contactually as a testimonial. I'm sure Tony would appreciate it. I'm going to put a link to Contactually under this show notes too, because it really is definitely worth checking out. Have you read Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port?
I have just finished it in January, which will be on my reading list. So I read like 8 to 10 books a month often. And some fiction in there, but like a good chunk, probably 50% business. And I just finished that for my 4th time.
Right.
It is good. The biggest problem with that book is it's hard at the beginning, and the first 2 times I did it, I didn't even do the work. Like I just read it. I was like, that's all great. And this sounds awesome and great. I finished the book. And if you don't do the work, don't waste your time.
You're right.
In short,
you're right.
And it is hard. I am not going to deny that. It's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of work, but it is absolutely worth it.
It is. Are you using his, because he partnered with Contactually, right, to deliver his system through it? Is that what you're using in Contactually?
No, I'm not using his system specifically. I kind of set up my own. So I used to do, I use Todoist currently as a product or as a to-do manager or task manager. And I used to just like put in my favorite clients and repeating tasks them and stuff. And so I did that, and something I was always looking for and kept thinking I should build this was like, how do I get articles in there? How do I introduce leads? How do I do all these other things? And that's when I saw Contactually, I was like, okay, I'll just use that, and and I'll see what happens after the trial. And then I was like, well, it's made me plenty of money, so so I will do that.
It's good, awesome, I love it. So the point is here that you're not just reaching out to people asking for work; you're continually adding value to your network, right?
Yeah, in fact, I'm very rarely asking for work.
Yeah.
I think probably only once. So I was at 10 Up for a while, for about 3 months, and I was probably a terrible employee, and I was not happy there. The absolute fair assessment, if Jake ever said you were a bad employee, I'd say he's probably totally right.
Right.
So I was a lackluster employee, and I wasn't happy. So we decided to part ways. And the only time, so when we decided like, hey, this isn't working, we should decide to go somewhere else, so that we can both not be angry at each other. Basically. Yeah. I sent out one email and said, hey, I've got some availability. Do you have any work? And that's probably the only time. Every other time, like, hey, have you seen this article? Have you seen these other things? And I relied on my memory too much, or on tasks I would repeat, as opposed to a system like Contactually.
Not that I would encourage you to talk out of school at all, but why was the experience at 10 Up not great for you? Was it just because you didn't have control over your own kind of journey?
Yeah.
Or?
So I went there because I was tired of dealing with clients. I said, like, all this client stuff, it's a pain in the butt. And I did not have processes. I did not have, like, I am epically better set up than I was then. I wasn't reading as much about business. I wasn't quite debt-free yet as well. In fact, I don't even think we had started on the debt-free stuff with Dave Ramsey's stuff. We hadn't even started on his work yet. So I was in a totally different space business-wise. I was probably running a hobby that mostly paid my bills, actually, and I was not running a business at that point. And so shortly after that, so I Yes, I wanted more control, and I'm trying to think, and the way I felt like I worked too much. Maybe I'm just lazy because like I probably only log 30 hours at the computer a week, right? I prioritize other things is probably the best way to say it. I think other things are more of a priority. And could I earn more just by putting more time in chair? Yeah, but I don't even want to do that. I want to go biking on Fridays. I want to go hang out with my kids. I make it to figure skating lessons pretty much every week at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon because that's what I want to do. It is more important. It's more important at my grave for someone to say I was a good father, a good husband, and a good community member. I could care less if they know I was built websites. That doesn't matter at all to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. That's nice. I mean, Shane Perlman from Modern Tribe, I've spoken to him about this at length. I mean, those guys have built a lifestyle business. I mean, it's really important to them that they and everyone in the organization has a good lifestyle. They don't want to be working 60 hours a week. I mean, some weeks I bet they do, but they don't want to be just working for the sake of being, the best agency on the planet.
Yeah, and there are absolutely times when I do work more, but I am, as you said in our pre-show, like I had the email up about the gift I was going to give you. I listened to 5 or 6 shows beforehand, so I had an idea of the questions. I read the questions twice, like once before I listened to a show and once after I listened to a show to make sure I had them down the general flow of it. So I am a very disciplined person. So if I have to work in the evenings or weekends, it's probably because I said yes when I should have said no.
Yeah.
And so I planned poorly. So I took on an extra client, or said, oh, sure, I can do that by Friday. When there is you cannot manufacture time out of thin air. You cannot find time in the couch. It's not there. You have a finite amount of it. You can choose how to use it. So
I like that. You can't find time in the couch. That's great. I've just found the link to DaveRamsey.com, Get Out of Debt with the Debt Snowball Plan. I'm going to put a link to that under the show notes here. And here's why, because budgeting, we had one of our WP Elevation members, Seamus, who I know he won't mind me telling this story. He actually suggested a piece of software called YNAB, You Need a Budget. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
And I was terrible at budgeting over the years. I've been really good at spending money. I've been pretty good at earning money. I've been terrible at budgeting. So invariably what would happen is there would always kind of be this low-lying kind of anxiety somewhere in the back of your mind about a big tax bill coming in or a big bill coming in and then having to kind of find the money for it, right? Well, YNAB teaches you to basically put money in envelopes for specific categories, and it's all a computerized version of it. And it's totally changed my stress levels and my whole approach to work because I'm no longer anxious about having to pay for things on time because I know that the money is in the envelope, and our savings are good. And
Dave Ramsey does a modified envelope system, basically. One of the best things I think you can do is listen to his 30-minute podcast. Every day he does 30 minutes because as you come up, I listened to that for 2 years. Every day I'd listen to it. And I also taught his financial peace course as well. And people would say, I've got this question. And I'd be like, oh, Dave Ramsey answered that 3 or 4 times over the last 2 years. I've listened to this, these different questions from random people. It is fairly US centric. I'm lucky being in Canada that a lot of the general things line up and certainly all of the concepts line up, right? Like credit cards are stupid. Air miles are dumb. Like they don't do air miles because it's a benefit to you.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. The biggest mistake, I don't mind sharing this, the biggest mistake I made in my late 20s was rolling over one credit card into another because they offered a low interest on the transfer of debt, transfer of balance. And my Lord, if I knew what I know now back then, I would never in a million years have done that. Please, anyone listening to this, never take out a credit card to pay off another one. No, it's a vicious cycle.
As I say, well, they even know. So in Canada, at least, even if you close a credit card, if there's been a pre-authorized payment, 8 months later, it can be billed. I know that now. After collections is calling you, and I called the credit card and said, no, this is closed on this day. I have a letter saying it was closed on this day, and it was charged 8 months later. What's up with that? It's pre-authorized. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so I saw the credit card out there floating to possibly get charged, maybe whenever they decide it's okay.
Yeah. So, and I think this stuff's really important because financial stress is probably the worst kind of stress that you can experience because it actually goes to the very core of survival, right? And if you can just get your finances under control, it actually frees you up to think clearly about the business that you actually want to build, not the business you think you need to build in order to pay the bills.
Absolutely. The biggest issue cited on divorce papers is financial stress, all around money ideas. And one of the biggest reason businesses fails all comes down to money management.
Yeah, totally.
Those are two of the biggest things that you can get out For sure. I know actually we even helped through our church coach people who are looking at divorce and like got their finances on track, and 30 days later like, you know what, it's everything else is so easy now that we're arguing about money still, because it usually takes 3 to 6 months for a couple not to argue about how they're going to budget every month.
Yeah.
But yes, we're still arguing, but we have the same vision at the end of this, so they keep pushing better for it.
Yeah. And I mean, we're completely off track here, not talking about anything
I think
WordPress
it's all
related.
important though. Like
I think it's very important too, man.
Like having a wife and like finances that I know are just under control means that I have to earn a certain amount, and that's it.
Yep.
Right. I don't have to worry about the rest of it. There's all these things I don't even have to think of, which is good and bad, because I'm really good at totally forgetting conversations if I don't have to. That's not my area of responsibility.
Yeah.
But that all comes down because what you want to build is a proper business, and dealing with all that extra stress, it only impacts your business.
That's right.
Like, I know even days when I've had a tough day with the kids or like had a bad sleep, you come in and you're like, this whole day is like just terrible. Right. And it's always going to impact that. So fooling yourself into thinking it's not going to is terrible. I was reading a study recently from the Harvard Business Review about business productivity and how people excel, and basically how it related to their marriage and their family. And basically the better the marriage and their family and their finances were, the better they did at work. Yep. So do you want to do good at work? This all matters.
Yeah, totally.
Thinking it doesn't is just lying to yourself. And I don't think you want to lie to yourself, really.
I agree wholeheartedly. I couldn't agree more. So I'm going to put a link to Dave Ramsey's podcast and YNAB, You Need a Budget. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, and I strongly suggest if anyone out there is under any kind of financial stress or whatever, go and research and get your finances sorted, because it'll change everything else. And what it also does is it takes the pressure off so that you don't have to take those crummy jobs that you know are going to be a pain in the ass and not going to be profitable. All right. Hey, you mentioned Angie Meekin before about content strategy. Yeah. Meeker.
Angie Meeker.
So where can I find Angie? Where's she these days?
Is it Angie Meeker Designs?
Right, because that name, Angie's name, has come up a couple of times actually from guests on this podcast. So I'm going to try and reach out to Angie Meeker. There we go, Angie Meeker Designs. Yes, I'm going to reach out to Angie and try and get her on the podcast. So thank you very much for that. Right now, hey, we should do the elevation round for those that don't know. We should talk about something WordPress related.
Okay.
WP Elevation is a business accelerator for WordPress consultants. So if you want to grow up from being a freelancer and actually run a proper WordPress business, WP Elevation is a good place to start. So given that, I'm going to ask Curtis a series of quick questions. Consider this our lightning round, and Curtis is going to give us some quick answers off the top of your head. All right, ready to rock and roll? What is the number one thing any freelancer or consultant absolutely needs to know?
They need to know their value and how to use their time wisely.
There's that word again, the V word. Value, kids, value.
Even probably communicate their value, how to communicate their value and use their time well.
Nice. What is the best thing you've ever done to find new customers?
Follow up with people. Follow up with everyone basically every email you have, and contribute to them. Right.
Yeah. Nice. How do you stop competing on price?
Knowing how to communicate your value, and asking why. Right. If you're saying this is what we want done, and you say, okay, here's a price. They just outsourced fingers that happen to know how to code. Right. Asking why is this the best solution? What else could we be doing? What opportunities are lost? What opportunities would be better used? I
like it. Any tips on writing better proposals?
It's basically like a long form sales page. Here's your problem. This is why it's a really big problem. Here's how I can help you solve it. Here's why my experience in helping other people solve similar problems. Oh, and by the way, here's the price.
I like it.
But you've established, here's how much it's costing you by establishing the problem. Here's your other options. Here's why they're more expensive than this one. Here's my experience on doing it. Here's how I solve problems. And here's the price, which is, less 30 to whatever, say 50% less or 10%, in the 10% range of their cost.
I like it a lot. I've never heard anyone refer to a proposal as like the long form sales page format, but it makes perfect sense. Do you have a favorite tool or system for CRM? I think we may have already spoken about that.
Contact, Julie.
There we go. Tony's going to be very happy about that. Hi, Tony, if you're listening, by the way. Tony's the founder.
I can give you my address if you got cool stuff too.
Sweet. Tony's the founder of Contactually. Big shout out to Tony. What's the best way to keep a project and a client on track?
Communicate, and communicate. I meet with my client every week to talk about the project. I send you an email on Friday that says, this is what happened this week. This is what next week looks like. And I send you an email on Monday saying, this is what this week looks like. This is what you should expect to talk about on our next call.
And let me guess, you've got all that stuff kind of templated in Text Expander?
Absolutely.
I like you more and more. The more time we spend together, the more I like you, Curtis. Any ideas for getting referrals from existing customers?
Continue to contribute to them. How can the biggest question to ask in all of this is, how can you make their business better? How can you serve them and make their business better? And then they will. So even connecting people, right? So that's something I try to do, is connect people together. And every time they talk to this other person, they say, hey, Curtis introduced me to this. I wonder what he's doing right now. Yep. Or Curtis sent me this article on pricing and I earned better for it. I wonder what he's doing right now. And his specific projects are these types of things. So
Chris Lemmer sent me an email the other day introducing me to, I want to say Jason from Postmatic. I'm sure his name is not Jason. It's, what is it? Go Postmatic? Go, I've got to find this now.
Yeah, that's the email commenting.
Commenting via email. I'm sorry if your name's not Jason, man. It's been a busy week. But he just kind of reached out and said, hey, you guys should know each other, basically. It is Jason.
That's something that Chris does amazing, right? He's a connector. I know I often will end up chatting with him, or I'll see other people chatting with him. He's like, I'm having a problem with hosting. Oh, do you want the CEO's number for that?
Yeah.
You're having problems. I can do that for you.
Yeah.
He is very generous. I have a post coming out about the 3 things you should share, and I actually cite Chris Lemma being a connector there.
Yep.
As well.
He's awesome. And Kim Doyle just put me in touch with the guys behind the Beaver Builder plugin. So yes, connecting people who, and that's one of the things I love about running a podcast, is that your network just expands exponentially, because at the end of this interview, I'm going to ask you who you think I should interview next. And guess what? You're just connecting people, It's awesome. Final question in the elevation round. What's the number one thing you can do to differentiate yourself?
You can ask the question, why?
I love it. I like it a lot. All right. Thank you very much for that. Hey, what is the future for Curtis McHale? Where do you think you're going to be in 12 months' time?
In 12 months. So I would like to grow my business, probably not quite 10 times, but I'm on the road to 10 times my business, which would be $1 million a year. And wow. I would like to, I don't think that's crazy at all, really, when I really look at it. And I even telling my wife, I'd like to make $1 million a year. That's $90,000 a month. Yeah, $90,000 a month. And she looks at me, yeah, you can do that. Like, that was about the response, 2 seconds of thought. So I'd like to get on the road to that.
Awesome.
And I'd like to get out some more products for freelancers to help them do that. And I'd also like to convert all my business payment over to conversion-based payments. So I will help you make more sales, and I get paid a percentage of those sales.
Wow.
And those are the 2 methods that I'm looking at. And so if I help you make 0 sales, I make nothing.
Yeah.
So that is pure value-based payment. There is no ifs, ands, or buts, or guessing on value. Did you make more? Yes. Hey, I earn more.
Yeah.
Did you not? I don't earn anything.
Yeah. It's a balls-out rock and roll approach, isn't it? I love it. That's good.
It's got lots of potential, so you need to pick the right clients for it, right? That gets back to the right clients. So I have 2 that I'm trialing it with that are not necessarily the right clients dollar-wise, because their market is fairly small, but every other way they excel. I love working with them. They're excellent. I believe in their mission, everything like that. And so I'm trialing it with them currently.
It's funny, Frank Kern, love him or hate him, and I know that he's a very divisive figure. I happen to love him. He says basically, why would you make life harder for yourself? His approach is, I'll only work with a client where I'm convinced that I could, like, if I only get paid after I get them the result, then I'll take them on. So he looks at a client and says, if I only got paid after I got you the result that I'm promising, would I take you on as a client? And that basically means that they have to have good traffic, a good list, a product already in place that's selling at the right price point, where he says, well, yeah, I'm, 40 grand a year or whatever it is for coaching, but I know I only have to get you 10 new customers a year and it's going to pay for itself. So
Yeah, and so something I'd like to do is Dan Sullivan's coaching program, and according to his qualifications, I don't qualify. I'm just below qualifying. Oh, the vacuuming now outside my office. I don't know if you can hear that, but I can hear it. But I am just below that cusp, and I look at that and say, I want to be in there.
Yeah.
And so that is part of my goals also is to get to that. So I have I up on my calendar, the first thing I put on is vacation, and then I put on the courses I want to go to. And his is near the end of the year, so I can be like, I didn't do this last year, but look, my income is so much this year that I'm obviously well beyond what I would need to be for the next tax season.
This is a strategic coach, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to put a link to that also because Dan Sullivan's name is a name that keeps coming up on my radar and I don't know enough about him. So I'm going to do some more research on him and hopefully get him on the podcast.
He's probably one of the most energized 70-year-olds you'll ever listen to.
Wow. That's awesome. Cool. I'm going to do some more research there. All right. Hey, what is the number one piece of advice you would give any entrepreneur trying to build their own business?
One piece of advice. I think it's going to have to go back to knowing your value and communicating it and asking why, right?
Nice. I like it. That's good. Where can people reach out and say thanks, Curtis? Where can people get in touch with you?
I'm Curtis McHale everywhere. CurtisMcHale.ca, Curtis McHale on Twitter, Curtis McHale on any other random social network that crops up when I grab my username fast and never use.
Cool. Are you on what's that new one that popped up recently? Ello? Are you on Ello?
No, I looked at that one actually and said, whatever.
Yeah, I did. I did the same. Hey, final question for this interview: who would you like? Oh, actually, no. We should do the competition first, right? Sorry, haven't done the competition.
No, it's your show.
I got so excited just chatting with you, man. I completely forgot about the competition. So the competition is this. Now that you know what Curtis kind of does and what his philosophy and approach is, he has very kindly offered 2 complimentary consulting sessions. So we're going to have 2 winners in this competition. I'm going to get Curtis to swing by in a couple of weeks and award the prize by going through the comments. And in order to enter the competition, you know what to do by now. This is episode number 70 of the WP Elevation podcast. So you should know what's happening by now. I can't believe we're at episode number 70. Leave a comment under the video and tell Curtis why you are in business. What is your why? Why are you even in this WordPress freelance business thing? And I'll get Curtis to swing by. Yeah, is that right?
I was gonna say, if you're struggling with your why, if you don't have it down to the elevator pitch, then let me know what you think the parts of it are. What's the things that get you excited? What are you struggling with to get it? So, because not everybody has that for sure yet. Awesome.
And just a little hint, if you say that you're in this to make money, you probably won't win the prize. Cool. Hey, finally, who would you like me to try and interview and why?
I think that you should interview, I was going to say Angie Meeker, actually, because she's awesome and she's great on content strategy and she helps developers and designers not talk nerd to their clients because their clients don't speak it. But I was also going to say Kirk Bowman, who runs the Art of Value podcast, and he talks all about value.
Right. Well, isn't that interesting? Because I was on Kurt's podcast late last year and we spoke all about pricing.
You should get him on to talk about value and how to communicate your value. He would be very good for that.
All right. And it's Kurt Bowman, isn't it?
Kirk.
K-I-R-K.
Kirk.
Okay, of course it is. That's right. In fact, Kirk sent us Christmas cards. He sent myself and Jin in the office here a Christmas card as a way of just saying, hey, thanks for connecting with us and being on the podcast. So Kirk Bowman and Angie Meeker, I'm coming to get you for the podcast, courtesy of Curtis McHale. Keep your eyes on your inbox. Hey, Curtis, seriously, man, I could just sit here and chat for ages with you. This has been awesome. I've learned a lot. I've had a lot of fun. And I wish you all the best for the future, man. And please keep in touch and let us know how things roll out.
Oh, thanks.
Cool. Cheers. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the WP Elevation podcast as much as Curtis and I did, especially the rant about personal finances. That was fun, wasn't it? And totally unexpected. But something that people don't often talk about. And when we started off on that rant, I thought in the back of my mind, is this going to be relevant? And I thought, no, it is. We should be talking about this. It's important stuff. Of course, this episode is brought to you by WP Migrate DB Pro. They are sponsoring the podcast for a month. Thank you very much to Brad Towernard and the guys at Delicious Brains for that. And I hope you got a lot out of our little interview with Jason Resnick, who uses WP Migrate DB Pro on a daily basis, and you should be too. So go and check it out at deliciousbrains.com, or just Google WP Migrate DB Pro, or click the sponsorship message on this page. Visit the website and see what it's all about. Hey, subscribe to the podcast, of course, at wpelevation.com/subscribe, and you'll get a free webinar when you subscribe. I think that's what we're giving away at the moment. I'm pretty sure it's a free webinar about creating content, which, by the way, is a very important skill that you can teach your clients. There you go. You can have that one. All the show notes for this particular episode you can find at wpelevation.com/Curtis McHale. That is CURTIS MCHALE. All one word, all lowercase, no spaces, hyphens, underscores, or hieroglyphics. That is the pretty link for this show, wpelevation.com/Curtis McHale. And remember, leave a comment underneath this video, and you could win a consulting session with Curtis McHale. And remember, the last client that he consulted with, he netted an additional $1,000 a month in contract income. So definitely check that out. And remember, leave a comment underneath the video and tell Curtis why you're in business. If you don't have a why, then just tell him what you're passionate about. And remember, making money will not win you the prize. So leave your comment underneath this video. I'll get Curtis to swing by in a couple of weeks and award the prize. Please get on over to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and subscribe to us, rate us, and write us a review, please. It really helps us come up in the search results and helps us reach a wider audience and helps us help more WordPress consultants just like you. So if you're an iOS user, get on over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review. And if you're an Android user, I'm sorry your life is so horrible. No, I'm kidding. If you're an Android user, please get on over to Stitcher.com and check us out there and leave us some feedback there. Hey, next week on the podcast, now this is an interesting question because, frankly, I don't actually know who's on next week. Hang on. Next week is, hopefully it's going to be Remkes de Vries from Foresight Media and one of the organisers of WordCamp Europe. However, he's a bit sick at the moment with jet lag. So we're trying to get our time zones right, because when it's like, 7 o'clock at night for him, it's 4 o'clock in the morning for me, and we're trying to work out our time zone so that I can get him on the podcast. I was supposed to have done that interview already, but I haven't. So Remkes, please. I'm hoping we can do that interview, and if we can, then Remkes de Vries will be next week. If we can't, if he's still unwell, then I'm not sure who will be. Might be Jack McConnell, could be Shane Price, might be Joe Polizzi from the Content Marketing Institute. He's coming up. Or it might be Jason Lemure from Postmatic. Who else is coming up? Naomi Bush from Stripe. Woohoo! That's just a hint of some of the guests we've got coming up in the podcast. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. And of course, until next time, I've been Troy Dean. Now your turn to go elevate.